Hey everybody, it's Jeremy, and welcome to a new episode of Sipping with Jeremy. On today's episode, we're going to be tasting Town Branch whiskeys from Lexington Distilling Company. Now, for those of you who have been fans of this show, you might notice that I'm not wearing a Wine Country shirt today, and that is for a specific reason. So, I did go to the University of Louisville in Louisville, Kentucky, and Lexington, Kentucky is right up the road from us, and they are in-state rivals, the University of Kentucky. So while I am drinking Lexington product today, I wanted to wear a Louisville shirt to balance out the forces. So Lexington Distilling Company is an off-branch of Lexington Brewing Company, which opened in 1890. It is now owned by the Lyons family. Mark Lyons is running it. It was his father Pierce who bought it in the early thousands, and they opened Lexington Distilling Company in 2012. And this line of whiskey is called Town Branch, for the Town Branch Creek that runs through Lexington, Kentucky. So we have three different expressions of Town Branch whiskey today. We have their bourbon, their true cask strength bourbon, and their rye. Let's go ahead and get started with the bourbon. So sometimes it is tricky with whiskey to get facts on the product itself, especially when it comes to mash bill. More distilleries are becoming open with that, but there are still a lot of distilleries that hold the secrets of their mash bill like it is the codes to any type of nuclear bomb. So I can't tell you exactly what is in this mash bill for Town Branch. I do know that since it is a straight bourbon, it is aged for at least 2 years. I do remember once hearing that their bourbon, their straight bourbon, is an average about 7 years. They don't have anything on their marker, so they can't say that for sure, but it's an average of a 7 year from what I've heard. And let's go ahead and try it out. So this bourbon has a real old school feel to me, and what I mean by that, it just has a lot of classic bourbon flavor profile. So you do get some really nice like toasted toffee flavors in here, some nice stone fruits, a little bit of richer kind of stone fruit there. Then you get some really bold baking spices and a lot of oak spice too. So it definitely has a woodsy kind of finish to it, very more aromatic kind of baking spices too. Again, some softer stone fruit, but definitely more vibrant with the spice flavors on this one. This is definitely one you can sip on its own. Put an ice cube in there and really let the aromatics come out a little bit more. But yeah, it's a very straightforward style bourbon, very classic in its profile. Let's go ahead and move on to the True Cask bourbon now. Town Branch's True Cask bourbon is an uncut blend of their two bourbon mash bills and it sits at 109 proof, so you're looking at about 54% alcohol. And this also was a Spirit of the Month for us in the past. I'll make sure to put the link below so y'all can check out that blog post too. Let's go ahead and try this out. There's a constant debate in the alcohol world where people ask if you chill down your spirits, if you drink them straight, if you do it on the rocks, if you throw in water, and I think to me it all depends on who you are and what you're drinking. For me, I sometimes do like to put a little water in a high proof spirit. I do like to throw an ice cube in there if I'm going to be enjoying something for a while. But one of the main differences is you get a very different flavor profile once you start modifying a spirit. And being able to taste a bourbon and its cask strength bourbon right next to it are great examples of that. Town Branch's bourbon, they are adding water to get it down to that 54% alcohol that it's staying at. You're definitely getting some more heat, but that heat actually brings a lot more characteristics with it as well. So there is a lot of floral spice notes up front that you don't get in the standard bourbon. In this True Cask, there also is a lot more of a fruit characteristic, bolder kind of stone fruit with a lot more of like a citrusy orange zest too. And then there is some really nice like burnt caramel, brown sugar characteristics. So just a much more expressive version of the bourbon in the True Cask you get here. Again, a lot more of those floral spice notes up front. Richer kind of fruit too, and then you just get some really nice softer sweetness on the back end. So just a really well developed whiskey out of the bourbon and the True Cask. I like this one a little bit more, which is why it was a Spirit of the Month for us, and it's just really well done and delicious. So let's go ahead and move on to the rye now. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes it is harder to get mash bills for these whiskeys, and Town Branch with their rye, they let you know that is a low rye whiskey, but that's really about it. So what that means is that it's still at least 51% rye in the mash bill because it is a straight rye whiskey. That just means they have a lot more of that malted barley in there too. They call this a low rye, high malt whiskey. So I don't know the exact percentages, but I would imagine that the rye is somewhere in that 50% range, And then with the malted barley, you probably get something in the double digits, which usually for malted barley in a whiskey, you're getting about like 5 to 10% in a rye. So I'd imagine it's probably more in that 10 to 20%, I would say. But yeah, let's go ahead and give it a taste. Up front, you get this really bold rye spice that also brings in a little bit of a caraway characteristic. You also do get a little bit of a vanilla bean that adds some softer sweetness. But then there is also this really bold kind of oak spice on the back end that is hiding some really subtle fruit and a little bit of an orange zest aspect too. So just a really full kind of style rye. I'm actually surprised, being told that this is a low rye, high malt mash bill. I would have thought it'd be a little sweeter than it actually is. The rye flavors that they get in that, lower percentage in the mash bill still does really well though. Still really expressive up front with some softer kind of sweetness on the back end, but really more of that spice of the oak and the baking spices really take over on the finish. So it finishes off a lot more savory than you would expect it to. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap up this episode of Sipping with Jeremy. Thank you for joining us today. Hope you learned something interesting. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our page so you can keep up with all the sipping withs. And don't forget to look at our website too. Below we will have links to our site. I will have a link for each of these products also on our site. And I'll make sure to add the link to the blog that I wrote about the True Cask Bourbon when it was our Spirit of the Month. Thanks for checking in with us, y'all. Have a good one. See you in a couple weeks. Drink well and go Cards.